Okay, we had the pleasure of listening to Brad Holmes today, kind of wrap up our season. More than likely won't be hearing from him for a little while. I'm not real sure if he's going to be doing any more pressers between now and the draft, but hey, we got some really good nuggets out of this one today, and I feel vindicated. So let's talk about it. Number one, Brad has always been upfront with us, and if you just pay attention to his mannerisms, his actions, the process, the results, sometimes you get the answers, right? And I think that he's always tried to give us the answers up front to a degree. He really doesn't play hide the weenie, if you will, too often. It just seems like he's really passionate about what he does, really upfront about what he does, and that leads to what we're going to talk about today. You know, I really try not to let my emotions, get the best of me when I'm delivering, what I think is pretty solid content or information. And just listening to Brad today, about midway through this presser, he kept coming back to something, kind of really throughout the whole thing. But the changes that you're expecting, not going to happen, especially in the pass rush. And we're going to start with this first one here.
I've always told y'all as we approach this time with player acquisition, when we're signing guys for free agency or we're drafting guys, I've always been very upfront with y'all about it's the names on the depth chart when we're not playing football. It's going to change, unfortunately. I've told you guys, look, we're looking at this thing, what's going to look like November and December, and that's why me and Dan are so heavily concentrated on depth, even though when sometimes it's like, man, why didn't you sign, that most expensive free agent? Well, we're trying to cure depth because this kind of stuff happens. So we've kind of stuck true to that, but because I've always thought about that, when the injuries happen, I guess I'm mentally prepared for them a lot better. Now, you don't know to what extent it is, but really from a negative emotion standpoint, I just feel bad for the players, really. I feel like the players put so much into it, and a lot of times it's bad luck. When you look at some of these injuries of how they happen, it's like they were some of them just bizarre. I hate it for the players because they put way too much into it to get the rash of bad luck. But in terms of how we roll, look, I say from a positive standpoint or positive emotion, it actually kind of fuels me, and it fueled our personnel department as the attrition piled up to, like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? It happened. Just like I said, that divisional loss happened. What are you going to do? The injuries happen. You can't pout them back to health. Again, you hate it for the players, but what are you going to do about it? And I do think our personnel department did a really good job in terms of responding and doing what they had to do, and a lot of credit just to the process. So we weren't scrambling, we weren't finding guys at the last minute. A lot of guys that we added were identified early on in the process, and guys that we thought was going to fit, and they did. And also credit to the coaches just getting those guys ready to play and contribute that quick. That's very hard to do. But yeah, I don't really. It sucks, yeah, but it happens.
It happens. It is what it is, and that's what it was. So Brad said that people question why he didn't bring in the most expensive free agent and why he didn't, bring in all these extra horses to the race, right? And how come we don't have this huge pass rush at the end of the season? And I mean, let's just be real here. He stuck to his guns. He stuck to what he does and what he's doing and what has worked so far. You build the depth first. Always. Always, always, always. If we didn't have the depth, imagine that we signed Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, or pick any other name that keeps getting floated out there, $25 million a year. And they get injured just like Davenport did. They get injured just like Aiden did. And so now you're without a $25 million guy. Well, what if we doubled down? What if we brought in another guy that was $25 million right along with him? So you had Aiden, Myles, and somebody else. Biggest name you could think of. And they all get hurt. Well, now you don't have any depth at all because you just wasted another $50 million that year on two guys, and you can't go in and sign the $4 million, the $5 million, the $7 million guy. You can't go, sign the $15 million Carlton Davis. or the $5 million Meek or whatever he's making. You just won't have the money to do it. But without the depth that we had on this defensive line, we would have never gotten this far. You would have sacrificed your entire roster to be full of UDFAs and 1 or 2 year players, and that's about it. I'm just really sick of all the dribbling nonsense about pass rush and adding big name players, and it's just not a model that wins. It's not a winning formula. It doesn't sustain success. And I don't care about what your philosophy is about playing the game of football on the field. It's not going to happen on this team for a multitude of reasons. But the most important was Brad's not going to spend big money on big name free agents. He's just not going to do it. And he's kind of telling you already right here that he's not going to do it again. Now, he said he's not afraid of bringing in the right fit, the right player. But he's telling you the reason why that big name free agent didn't come in. Because they're going to stick to their process. They're going to build through the draft. They're going to build for sustainability. And no matter what you would have done this last season, you would have never been able to have, multiple high-end pass rushers at the end of the season when we needed them most. So the second part that I want to go over is, is he ever going to get pushed to F them picks and bring in those high-end, pass rushers, and follow up, with pass rush on this question too. And, what he's kind of saying here is that he was really confident in the original roster, and I'll play for it, and we'll talk about it here in just a minute.
Brad, where do you think you guys need to get better? Is it pass rush? Is it offensive line? Some of those guys are getting older.
I mean, look, when you're down 5 defensive ends due to injury, then I don't know who has a 6th, 7th, and 8th effective pass rusher. So when you get down that low, then yes, you could say. But, when we were at full health, I thought our pass rush was pretty good. I thought the whole defense. I think it was self-explanatory in terms of the numbers of what we were able to produce before that attrition happened. But honestly, we'll always look at all areas, and we'll always add competition at all areas. Look, you guys have seen us do it before. We drafted an inside linebacker in the first round when we had a pretty damn good linebacker room at the time. We doubled down that we don't really go into it with that mindset. We just try to add the best players that we think is fit, add the best competition. Obviously, free agency will be upon us quickly. That's when you kind of can do the fun stuff of the depth chart and filling in holes on the depth chart. But after that, we'll just kind of just find the best players.
So again, it's find the best players, right? It's not about bringing in these high-priced free agents in free agency. He made it very clear that you're already down 5 edge rushers on your team. Nobody has a 6th or a 7th or an 8th pass rusher that is really good, that is going to be just as good as your 2 starters. And matter of fact, he even mentioned, like the linebacker room and what he's willing to do and how we already had a really good linebacking room, or at least what he thought was, and he still went out and grabbed Jack Campbell in the first round. And now I'm already expecting that we're grabbing a defensive end in the first round or second round this year. I've been saying it since the beginning of this past season, that due to my roster roulette math here, this is where it makes sense. That you do it this year when Aiden was going to be up for an extension. Well, now he's probably going to get the 5th-year option and then possibly an extension. But this is going to be the year that we probably add somebody so that we have, another one dropping out of the funnel, right, as one is raising up to the top tier of the pay scale. But the point that he was trying to make here is nobody has an effective pass rush after you lose 5 players, 5 edge rushers. You've got 2 starters, 2 backups, but we lost our 5th too. Tell me another team that has a 6th and a 7th starting ability pass rusher on their team. I'll be waiting until I'm in the grave because it doesn't exist. So the next quote here. Again, I'm so glad that Brad, said some of these things today and some of these questions were asked today because it just vindicates my whole season.
Is the place where you're at now at that point where you might make that sacrifice when you normally wouldn't if you're trying to build, but you're at that point now, maybe I'll add that one veteran and give up picks for later or give up young players to get something that will put me over that last hump?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we've done that in the past where we've added some veteran players, whether it's free agency or, we had a trade for a veteran pass rusher and expend draft capital for that player. So we're not scared of that. It has to be the right player. So you can't look at it in kind of a transactional mindset and say, well, we got to get this veteran player and get rid of, if it's the right veteran player that can help us and it's the right fit, then we have no problem doing it if it's going to help our football team. But we've always said we're going to build through the draft, and I think that's why we're in the position that we're in from a quote-unquote window standpoint of having the comfort to keep building like we have been.
Okay, so again, he's talking about the standard, right? The comfort, doing the same thing that they've been doing, following the process. Asked again, is he at the point now where he's going to be willing to get rid of these picks and add a veteran pass rusher? The question's asked, is it offensive line? Is it pass rush? Where do you need to get better at? The only thing that Brad is concerned about is that it's the right fit, it's the right player, but he's still 100% saying that it's the draft is where they are building. It's the draft that, for them, it makes the most sense. That's their process. And it has to be. I mean, when you think about the amount of contracts that were just handed out this last season, Panay got paid, Amon-Ra got paid, Jared Goff got paid, Aleem McNeil got paid. So, you combine all those contracts together and you're probably right around $130, $140 million a year on average when you average out their contracts. Now, they're not all going to hit that way, but you just handed out half of the cap in one season to a handful of players. So how are you going to continue to bring in or even start bringing in extremely high-priced free agents? You can't. The model doesn't work. It does not. It just doesn't work. It never has. Ask Ryan Poles. It doesn't work. So 100% through the draft is where they're going to build. He said that, they are in a position that they are in right now because of the process that they have followed. Build through the draft, build the depth. It gives him comfort to maintain the same process because it's working and to continue to do the same thing that they've been doing. So again, don't expect any big name free agents. You're going to hear all the clickbait. You're going to see all the clickbait that this person's coming, that person's coming, and this person makes sense. Or, should the Lions draft this player? Should the Lions, sign this player? Should the Lions bring in this player? Blah, 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 blah. It's been the same old crap year after year after year. It just gets this fan base, off its rocker thinking that we deserve these players or that we need these players or that we can afford these players. And then when it doesn't happen, they'll try to tie this narrative. See, we lost the divisional round. See, we needed a pass rush. No, you lost 21 players. That's why you lost the divisional round. It's not because of anything else. It's because you lost 21 players. By the way, half your starters. And you were down to third and fourth stringers, around that defense. That's why. So Brad is, again, he's telling you the truth. He's telling you everything right here again at the end of the season, and he'll tell you the same thing in a couple of months when it's draft time. Let's get into the last and final point here by Brad that I wanted to bring up.
Linebacker, we got hit in training camp at linebacker, and then it trickled into the season. But pass rusher, and this is the first time we've had to trade for a pass rusher this year, and I will say that was the most difficult player acquisition journey that I've ever dealt with. Look, you can look at all these names of all these starting defensive ends in the NFL, but when you start doing the work and you start making the calls, that thing shrinks down. From availability standpoint, that thing shrinks down like this. And a lot of the guys, look, we have an early trade deadline. So you start calling these other teams and these other GMs, and they might have 4 rushers. And so forget the starters. Those guys aren't even available. We're talking about third and fourth. And, yes, and I can't really disagree with them where they say, look, we got 2+ months of football left, and I trade you one, and then we get another one hurt, and we only got 2. And I was like, I didn't really expect you to be rational and think about it that way, but it's true. So, you know, there wasn't. So when we got Zadarius, he was one of a small handful of guys that were actually available to actually get that, you know, we felt was going to compete and contribute at a starter level. So that one was, I think that one, just going through that experience, I could say just sharpened me up a little bit. And after the Thanksgiving Day game, I know multiple people in our personnel department, including myself, never experienced poaching 3 players on a practice squad in one day. That's because, you know, when you're committed to that player for 3 weeks, and there's a process to poach a player from a practice squad, but never done that. You poach one guy, and then okay, that's your one poach, and that might be your one poach for weeks and weeks and weeks. But to do 3 in one day, that was a unique experience. But again, when that happened, we were very motivated. Like it wasn't a sour soul. All these guys that had to go on IR that morning, and all the guys were just excited. They're motivated. They're encouraged to go in that process, and we were able to identify guys that were able to come in and contribute.
It's all about contributing. It's all about finding players. And he just, again, set the stage that, you know, talking about pass rush and why they're not available, he's made it very clear. Most teams have 4 edge rushers on their team. 4. 2 starters, 2 backups. What did we have this year? 9 total defensive linemen, or 10? And so you've got like 4 or 5 on the defensive line and 4 or 5, you know, as your edge rushers. Now in a 3-4 scheme, it's a little bit different. You know, you've got 2 outside linebackers and an end, right? And a nose tackle and a D tackle. So it's a little bit different. You have a bit more of a mixture in a 3-4 scheme. But a 3-4 scheme doesn't necessarily mean those guys are going to fit into a 4-3 scheme. So you still may not have as many players available as what you'd like to think. But he also talks about poaching players, right? And how what they were able to put together, poaching 3 in one day, it's just never done. You know, you're committed for 3 weeks, 9 weeks of total pay between 3 guys, and they hit it out of the park. All of these guys were able to contribute. But the thing that I want to really drive home, and the thing that Brad really vindicated today, is there is nobody to pick up. And even at the trade deadline, these guys have to be available. Remember, the list goes from this, everybody in the league, to this. And he talks about having a handful of available players for the edge position that he thought could start, which means none of them were starters. So none of the starters were available. Like he said, forget about it. So it bothers me that we've got this faction of the fan base that either they don't know football, they're learning football, they don't really care about football, they just like to watch the game, but they get caught up into this narrative that Brad Holmes isn't doing a good enough job, that it's Brad Holmes' fault, blame Brad Holmes for the season. To me, that's just the largest SOL take, and that person just is not really a fan, in my opinion, because you're attacking the general manager that has done nothing but amazing things. And if you understand how the game of football works and how the management of football works, I mean, all of us have a lot to learn, but pay attention to what he's saying. He's not feeding you a bunch of bull crap. It's true. Go look around the league. Go tell me how many defensive ends in a 4-3 scheme around the league are available. It's one of the rarest positions in the NFL right now. There's just not a lot of 275-pound, 6'4" guys that can run, a sub 4.6, 4.47 available. They just don't exist. There's not just, 25 TJ Watts just hanging out on a corner ready to play ball. There's not. You don't even have 10 JJ Watts. So pay attention to Brad. Look, Brad is not to blame on this season. If you just want to talk crap about your team, well, whatever. It just shows us how much you really don't know about football, I guess. And it shows us that maybe you're really not invested into the team, that it's just all about entertainment. I don't know. I don't get it. But, Brad Holmes has done a lot for this team. but he's going to stick to one thing, and that is the same thing that they've been doing year in and year out so far to get us into the position that we're in. And that is finding the right players, making sure that they fit this team. He's going to build through the draft. He's not going to F them picks, but if the right player comes along and at the right time for the right amount of money, I'm sure he would entertain an offer. But there's also one other thing in here that he mentioned, that this was the first time that he's gone through this situation of having to bring in an edge rusher, having to, go out and shop one and go through the whole process. Well, that means all of the lies and misinformation that was spread last year at the trade deadline that we were bringing in Danielle Hunter, well, I think you got your answer now, because he just said he hasn't done it yet. This is the first time he's had to do it. Is he lying? Or is somebody else lying? I don't know. I guess I'm still going to believe in Brad Holmes. So at the end of the day, look, our team is headed in the right direction. Yeah, we had a shitty loss. We lost a lot of players. And, the war of attrition in the NFL game is sometimes too big of a cost to bear. And that's what ended up biting us this season. Just too many injuries. But the one thing that I'm glad that they're going to remain the same on is the process. Trust the process. They're going to be fine. But I hope all of you that doubt Brad Holmes, that hopefully have a chance to listen to this, I'm just trying to give you the information that's factual, because there's so much crap out there, and we hate seeing all these SOL fans just kind of infect the fan base, because either they haven't researched it, they don't know, they don't care to know, they're just regurgitating some other bull crap that they heard, or maybe they just haven't learned enough about football yet. Now, I don't know everything, but I do know one thing. What I don't know, I will find out, and I will ask questions from the right people to find you the right answer. We'll see you guys in the next one. Go One Pride, go Detroit Lions. Take care.
You can do it!